Today's episode is brought to you by Folkwear. Since 1976, Folkwear has provided high-quality sewing patterns based on authentic vintage and folk clothing from around the world. Folkwear sewing patterns are loved by home sewists, costumers, re-enactors, and anyone who loves to sew with creativity. Order yours today and use the code WSN20 at checkout to get 20% off your order. Thank you so much, Folkwear. And now, here's the show. Welcome to episode 121 of the While She Naps podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg. Today, we are talking about art as community organizing with my guest, Shannon Downey. Shannon is an instigator. Currently, she's the Director of Development for Asian Americans Advancing Justice in Chicago, where she raises funds to grow and protect immigrant and refugee rights and power through civic engagement and language access. She's also adjunct faculty at Columbia College and DePaul University, where she teaches creatives how to build empires that will pay the bills and change the world. But Shannon is also best known by her alias, Badass Cross Stitch, where her shenanigans tend to get the most attention. In this role, Shannon is a community organizer disguised as a fiber artist and craftivist. She blends politics, activism, and art into projects that are designed to inspire others to take action, think, discuss, engage with democracy and their community, and find some digital analog balance to boot. Her work has recently been featured in Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, Time, and Money, to name a few. Shannon Downey, welcome.
Thank you so much.
I am so excited to talk with you. And we recently met virtually via email when we discovered that you are originally from a town that is not too far away from where I live now in the Boston area.
That's so true.
So
Boston is my roots.
Yeah, where are you originally from?
I'm from Weymouth, Massachusetts.
Okay.
So South Shore.
South Shore. And your grandmother, I think, was a Lowell Mill girl?
Yeah, she absolutely was. She was a Lowell Mill girl from, she was 13 when she started and in her 70s when she retired. And then she actually met my grandfather in the mills. He was a bobbin boy.
Wow. So do you want to talk a little bit about, for people who don't know what the Lowell Mills were and what that kind of work involved? I've been there to visit, and you can still go and visit and see. It's like a museum now, and there's a popular field trip for people who live in Massachusetts. But for people who aren't familiar with New England, what is that?
Yeah, the Lowell Mills was sort of the hub of the Industrial Revolution in the U.S. as it relates to like women in the industry, right? So it was the first time that women were given a role as like sort of and sent away from, their families and their farms to work in these industry towns that were created in order to create textiles, and so. So now it's actually the only urban national park in the U.S. now.
Wow. Right. Okay.
And so my first time actually visiting, since it, wasn't a functioning mill, was last year to go and see the exhibits and go through the functioning mill, the exhibit portion of the functioning mill at this point. And it was so powerful. It was really neat to be in there because I'd never been in the mills, despite my grandmother working there. We just sort of like picked her up and, at the end of a day. But to go in and see and just experience how loud it is and how intense it is, it was really neat.
Yeah, it was an incredibly loud place when all of the looms were going.
Yeah,
I do remember that. So, okay, and in your own sort of fiber life, you learned how to cross stitch when you were in elementary school in fifth grade.
I did. Yeah.
And do you want to talk about that first project your teacher taught you?
Yeah, my fifth grade teacher. She taught four of us. I went to a small Catholic school, and so there were only 12 people in my class. And we had one teacher all day, and so they decided that they would do some, like an art day, and you could pick what classes you wanted to take. And so I thought I would learn how to cross stitch. And so the first stitch I made was a pink bunny. And I thought, well, this is stupid. I'm like, it's a pink bunny. And then I went to like a craft store and I found this pattern, and it was a little toilet. It said, if you sprinkle when you tinkle, please wipe up the seat. And I got a real kick out of that. And I thought, well, maybe there's something, something to this for me. So that hung in our bathroom for, years.
I'm impressed I'm impressed you finished it.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny and it was going up.
Okay.
So I was finishing it, but I didn't really touch it again till 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay, and then and I know you've said that you were sort of an activist since birth, and I wondered whether you had models of activism in your family. Like, were people in your family, sort of talking about politics, or were there like union organizers in your family? Were people sort of into that, or were you kind of alone in your activism?
Oh no, my parents, my grandparents, like it runs deep. My grandmother, my maternal grandmother was, a Lowell mill girl. So in the Industrial Revolution. And then my other grandmother was an actual Rosie the Riveter. So there's this powerful women history running through the family. And my dad is, has since retired, but was in the Boston Pipe Fitters Union for his entire career and was president of the union for 4 years. So I definitely grew up on a picket line. There was a lot of organizing happening around me. There was a major labor movement moment in the 80s around a ballot measure. And so my home became the hub for all organizing around that. And we were on the picket line for almost a whole year. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely genetic at this point.
And what do you remember specifically about that? I mean, do you have any specific memories about that, or about how it made you feel like as a kid, in sort of watching all of that unfold in your household and in your family, and watching your family members being affected by it?
Absolutely. It was, there was always so much sort of fun and joy in it, even though it was such an intense topic and there was a lot of intensity around it and opinions around it. But for me as a kid, it was there were always people in my house who were making all sorts of signs, and that was super fun. And then, there was always good food around because there were always people coming in and out. And then, we got to go stand on the picket line, and people would drive by and beep, and we'd wave and cheer. And, it was just really joyous. And then when when that particular measure, we won that measure, just the community that had grown out of it then became a community that stuck. Right. And we spent a lot of time together. And then the other piece is that my parents were always poll monitors for voting. And so getting to go to the polls was always really exciting because it was this sort of fun family activity. And there was always candy and stickers and people that I hadn't seen in a long time and dogs. And, it's so silly to think about, how we're there doing this really important thing. But as a kid, I remember just how much fun it was and what a novelty it was.
Right. I mean, as a kid, whatever your family is doing is normal, right? Like
Yes.
you don't know anything different,
Totally.
and so that's just totally normal. But it does sort of the values that are part of it sort of become imbued and into your values and become, so it's sort of, it does become part of you over time. And, my dad was in the Peace Corps in Peru, the third year of the Peace Corps. And the stories that he used to tell about, the people he worked with, he was involved in setting up micro lending programs, certainly helped me when I was in high school and in early years of college feel like I need to do Teach for America and go and like work with people in underserved communities. It definitely made me sort of radicalize in that same way. And I think that, it sort of seeps in the way that your parents talk to you about their values. It seeps into become your values.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay. So, all right. So you then went on, I know you ran a digital strategy company for a long time, and now you have this job working in Chicago. And I wonder if you want to tell us a little bit about what you do now.
Sure. So I'm the director of development for a nonprofit organization called Asian Americans Advancing Justice Chicago. And what we do is power building through collective advocacy and organizing in order to, we're working on racial equity.
Okay. And director of development is like fundraising. That's what my husband does. So I understand.
I'm in charge of all the money.
That's
not spending it, just getting it.
Yes, it's a really important job, and it's a hard job too. Yes. And then you also do some teaching at some universities as well.
I do. I love that so much. I mean, I love everything I do. But
okay.
Teaching at Columbia in particular is just such a great joy.
And what kind of courses are you teaching right now?
They're mainly like business and entrepreneurship classes for creatives.
Okay.
They're super fun. By the end of each semester, each student has built a business plan and is like ready to launch a business. It's really neat.
That's terrific. Okay. That sounds really cool. And then you have Badass Cross Stitch, which is how I know you, and how I think a lot of people probably know you. And I kind of scrolled way, way, way back in your Instagram. And like a couple of things were striking to me. First of all, one of them was that it used to be really more cross stitch, and now it seems more embroidery, which is interesting to me. Like, I don't know whether you've noticed that change.
Totally.
Yeah. And I wonder if you could speak just a little bit about why you think that is.
Well, I only knew how to cross stitch, right? So I was cross stitching a lot. And then as I started to sort of like get into it, I was like, man, cross stitch takes forever. There's got to be different solutions here. And honestly, you're sort of limited if you're only cross stitching. There's sort of one look to it, right? And so I started to teach myself different embroidery stitches, which I actually then sort of launched this project called the Year of Stitch, where each week I taught myself a new embroidery stitch, and then I taught everybody else online with an illustration I had done, and then like a photo sort of essay of how to do each stitch and then how to apply it in different ways. So at the end of that year, I had taught myself and others 52 stitches. And then I really had like a whole bunch of ammunition for creating some really cool stuff.
Right. Okay. So that's how you basically learned how to embroider as a result of that project. Okay. That sounds really cool. So that was one thing that was really striking to me. And I also saw, I think it was always irreverent from the very beginning, and it sounds like even from fifth grade, it was kind of irreverent. But it really became activist at a certain point. And it's now super activist, especially since you've built this massive following. And we're going to talk about how that came to be, because there's been some really big, I don't know if you would call them wins or like viral happenings
Yeah.
that have taken place that have been totally fascinating, the trajectory. So I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the first one I think was sort of about gun violence. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
That was the my end gun violence project.
Okay.
That was just sort of a small one.
Okay. So that was that was sort of the first taste of like,
Yes.
okay. So talk a little bit about that one, sort of how it came to be and what the project entailed.
Sure. So my fiance started and runs a program called Project Fire, which works with young people in Chicago who've been the victims of gun violence and teaches them how to blow glass as art therapy and as employment. They get paid to be in the program, and they partner with like a hospital-based therapy organization, and they come in and so for each class that they're doing this glass blowing and learning glass blowing, they're also getting, they do like a group therapy, and they get wraparound services and all sorts of amazing things. So I am around the topic of gun violence a lot, in addition to the fact that I live in Chicago, where it's just like rampant. So I decided that I would, stitch a gun one night. I had spent the day logging how many times I heard, said, or read the word gun in a day. And at the end of that day, it was 72 times. And I thought, oh my God, no wonder I'm so overwhelmed by this. And so I often stitch to process. So I sat down and I stitched a gun. And I'd never stitched a gun before. It was like way outside of my comfort and purview. But I was like, I'm going to post it and see how people react to it. And, of course, my comments were around like why I did it and, what I was thinking about when I was stitching it. And then organically, people started to ask me if I would turn it into a pattern so that they could stitch one, because they've been thinking about gun violence a lot. And then as people started to stitch them and tag me, I was like, man, these are awesome. I wonder what they're going to do with them. So I was like, hey, what are you going to do with those? They were like, I don't know. I was like, cool. Would you send them to me? And people just were like, yeah. And I was like, I'll do something. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I'll do something cool with them. So then I decided, okay, this is going to be a project. And so I partnered with Project Fire, and I said, let's have a gallery show. So I asked people to send me, and so then I got intentional about it and turned it into a project. And I asked people to stitch a fiber-based gun, so whatever that meant to them, and send them to me. But I only had about 6 months to collect these. And so people were sort of rapid stitching and sending them to me. And at the end of the 6 months, we had over 200 from all over the world. And we put on a gallery show. And we, with permission, sold all of the pieces. And the young people from Project Fire had all of their glass art out. And so that opening night, we had over 500 people show up in what was definitely like the tiniest gallery ever. So it's really amusing. But we were able to sell every piece and raise $5,000 and fund the next semester at Project Fire.
Nice. Lovely. Yeah. And a little bit of development work in there.
Yeah, always. Yeah. I can't stop myself.
Of course. Right. Okay. Wonderful. So that was kind of a community-based stitching related activism event that was organized primarily through Instagram, right?
Yeah.
And was there like a hashtag, or I don't know how you...
Yeah, the hashtag was End Gun Violence.
End Gun Violence. Okay, great. All right. All right. So that was probably pretty inspiring, I'm guessing, for you. And then I don't know whether the order... the sort of order of, I'm not necessarily going in the order of that you made things, but maybe the order of virality or the media attention maybe. But it was the next big one, the Women's March one.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So I'm just trying to make sure I get things right.
You're doing great.
All right. Yay. So this one was really pretty huge. So the Women's March was the day after the inauguration, and you were there. You had made this embroidery hoop, this giant embroidery hoop. I think it was 3 feet
Yeah.
And you stitched a message on it. And first, I have to ask you where you found a 3-foot embroidery hoop.
Amazon.com.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I literally Googled like world's biggest embroidery hoop to see what would happen. And I found one and I was like, yep, there it is.
Okay.
It was only like $30.
So
Like, that's great.
all right. So you knew you were going to go to so you went to DC for this, right? You went to
No, I stayed in Chicago.
Okay. So this was at the Chicago March is where
Yes.
you went. Okay. So, and you knew you wanted to make a special sign. So it's kind of talk us through this process of like how you came up with this concept.
Yeah, well, I was brainstorming messages and just I was like stuck for days because there were just like a million different angles. And I was just like, healthcare, feminism, right? Like there's so many angles. And then at one point I was like, I'm just so angry. And I was like, I can't pick anything because I'm just so angry about all of it. And that's when I was like, oh, maybe that's my message. It's just like, I couldn't pick something because I'm so angry. And so then I started to play around with that, and then I was stitching, and I thought, I wonder if I could stitch this sign. That would be cool, because originally my thought was that I was going to like hand draw a stitched sign, like draw it so it looked like it was cross stitched. And I was like, wait a minute, why don't I just actually stitch it? So that's when I Googled like world's biggest embroidery hoop, and I was like, oh, I'm doing this. And so once I got the hoop, that's when the message came to me, and I was like, oh, that's perfect. And so the message was, I'm so angry, I stitched this just so I could stab something 3,000 times. And that is exactly how I felt.
I want to take a minute now to talk a little bit about our sponsor, Folkwear. Started by 3 women in California in the 1970s, Folkwear is one of the oldest indie sewing pattern companies in the United States. Folkwear has over 90 sewing patterns currently in print and several available as PDFs. All their patterns are based on authentic vintage and folk clothing from around the world. From a Japanese kimono to an Australian dirndl and a Victorian shirt to a 1950s at-the-hop skirt, the patterns span hundreds of years and more than 30 countries. Each pattern has a beautifully illustrated cover and includes well-written sewing instructions. The patterns also include historic and geographic and cultural information about the garment and how it was traditionally made or worn. Their patterns are perfect for beginners and for advanced sewers. Folkwear patterns also often include instructions for optional handwork. So if you want to learn embellishments such as traditional embroidery or applique, the patterns show you how, providing detailed instructions on embellishing. Folkwear's featured pattern of the month for May are 261 Paris Promenade dress and 119 cerules. The Paris Promenade dress is a pullover afternoon dress from the 1920s that flatters any figure and includes a pattern for a small handbag and instruction for making decorative cord and tassels. The cerules pattern consists of sewing patterns for comfortable and timeless pants from 3 geographic regions: Turkey, Africa, and India. Historic and cultural information about the pants is included, as well as traditional cuff embroidery designs and instructions. So cool. Folkwear's blog often highlights patterns, handwork, and sewing techniques. The blog also follows owner Molly's travels, especially when they include textiles, fabric, sewing, or crafting. So, sign up for Folkwear's newsletter on the website, www.folkwear.com, to get a textile and sewing information-filled newsletter twice a month. You can also follow Folkwear on Facebook, Pinterest, and Instagram, and Twitter. Shop Folkwear patterns at many local sewing and pattern shops, or go online to www.folkwear.com. That's FOLKWEAR.com. And listeners to the While She Naps podcast get 20% off their order on the website using the coupon code WSN20 at checkout. So go try one out and see what you think of these super cool patterns. Thank you so much, Folkwear. And now back to my conversation with Shannon. And did you stitch it in yarn, or like how did you make it bold enough?
I used floss, and I just stabbed that thing until it was thick enough and powerful enough.
And I feel like it was red. Was it red?
Yeah, the fabric was red, and then I stitched in black.
In black on red. Okay. All right. And then did you finish the back?
No. I mean, I stitched it all together so that it was closed in the back.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you show up at the march. You've got this big hoop.
Yeah.
And you're kind of just like holding it, like above your head sort of thing?
Yep.
Okay.
It was a really good arm workout.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. And you're walking around. And so it was like one of the most photographed signs of like the entire march, like the entire women's march. I feel like it was, am I right?
It was really overwhelming. Like I could not step 2 feet at the march, which was like super fun. Right. So like, I just like pasted a smile on my face and just held the sign, and like people were just taking pictures as I walked through the march. It was just really funny.
So you knew like right away that it was something special was happening.
I mean, people on site were very connected to it because they were just excited to see this like stitch sign and that, this funny message. And there were so many great messages and so much like humor in so many signs at that march. And then the like sort of unexpected layer of it being this giant embroidery hoop with it, with a message connected to that was, I think it was just like, one of those moments where people were like, oh, that's awesome. And then wanted to take a picture of it. And then we would start conversations, and then everyone was marching together, and it was just, it was so neat.
And I think, I also think because so many people had made something for that march, right? Like so many people in the week or 2 weeks leading up to that march had been to a knitting shop or had been to a craft store or had been to a neighbor's house, or had been to their mom's house or their sister's house and had sat there and tried to remember how to knit or cast on or crochet or how to like sew, this piece of fleece or whatever it was to make the pussy hat, right? Like so many people had tried to craft who maybe hadn't crafted in a long time, that it kind of had this like craft sort of ethos was in the air. And so maybe then seeing your crafted, granted it was in a different medium, but I wonder whether there was that as well. Like it resonated because of that as well.
Yeah, what a great observation. I hadn't considered that before.
Okay, I wonder. All right, so after the march itself, there was, were like media outlets contacting you? Like what happened about
it was just sort of everywhere. Okay. And then like all things, it was over.
Okay. Yeah. It was just that.
It was, it was like, cool. There was that moment for that piece done.
Oh, okay. And that was it. All right. Yeah. Got it. Okay. All right. So that was like sort of number 2.
Yeah.
All right. All right. And then there was Boys Will Be Boys.
Yeah. That was the big one.
Okay. That was number 3 and maybe the big one. All right. So, and I actually think this one is a really, really interesting story. It's kind of an ongoing story in a way. It's a really interesting story because it kind of goes in a circle. I don't know. It's fascinating. So it's sort of, okay. So you made this actually beforehand. You made this when the Access Hollywood tapes came out, right? So this was actually physically made before the election.
Yeah. Yes. October. Early
Oh,
October
okay.
of 2016.
Right. So you just want to describe what it is.
Yeah, it's a stitch. It says "Boys will be boys," and the bottom line is crossed out and then stitched over, and it says "held accountable for their effing actions."
But effing is actually
effing is spelled out.
Okay, got it. Okay, all right. So you made that when the Access Hollywood tapes came out, but it didn't go viral until later. And did you make a second version of it later, or was it the same one?
No, it was the same exact photo and piece from Instagram that a few celebrities picked up and used for around the Harvey Weinstein scandal. So the minute that a couple of celebrities got a hold of it, and I have no idea how.
And it wasn't because you had reposted it. It was just that.
No, I hadn't reposted anything. It just somebody picked it up. And then some celebrities picked it up, and then like many celebrities picked it up, and then it just went bananas from there.
Okay, so right, so later, so sort of when Me Too kind of happened, and do you remember kind of who the first celebrity was, or some of the celebrities were?
Yeah, I think the biggest initial kickoff was Tracy Ellis Ross.
Okay, and do you remember anybody else who picked it up?
Yeah, I mean, Rose McGowan put it out, Zoe Kravitz, Colin Hanks, and on and on.
Okay. All right. So it got picked up all over the place. Mm-hmm. And so then it went viral, right? Like that, would be a definition of viralism, right? On the internet. So it was everywhere, right? Like it literally went everywhere. And like, how did that feel for you? Like what was happening for you at that time?
I found it, I mean, at first I found it really ironic that, like I created it back in October thinking like, oh, here's the moment where Trump has been revealed and he will not be elected president. And then he was, and it was so it was just so deflating and confusing. And so then a year later to have it go viral and to see that somebody was actually being held accountable for their actions. Weinstein was being held accountable and called out, and that there was like actual impact. It was one of those moments where you're like, oh man, had celebrity picked this up back in October, would something have been different? Or was it just, this was the image that worked for how they were feeling it in that moment? You just look back and you sort of just wonder about timing. But when it went the real time, the second time, the Weinstein time, at first I was like, oh, that's cool. Like people are seeing this, they're connecting to it. But the part when everything shifted was when all of the women who used it as the illustration for their Me Too stories, right? So they were coming out with these really powerful, incredibly brave stories and using that image to, accompany that and tagging me and, citing me. And so then I felt this incredible responsibility to like read all of them and to comment and to say something to them, because I just felt like it couldn't go unnoticed. And so that's when it shifted from like, oh, that's neat, to like, oh, wow, this is incredible. I'm so, it was no longer mine, right? Like that piece isn't mine anymore. And it's theirs, and it's theirs and everyone who's used it in a way to speak their truth. So that's when that shifted from it being like, oh, that's cool, to, oh, wow, that's incredibly powerful and no longer about me or, my connection to that piece.
But then it was co-opted in a different way.
Indeed it was.
So what happened next?
A UK fashion company that makes, fast fashion, took it and stitched it onto the pocket of a pair of skinny jeans, used my name in the product description, used copy like pair it with a bodysuit and pair of boots for the ultimate babe vibes, and sold them for, 22 pounds without my permission, of course. So at that point, people started to come to me to say like, hey, did you partner with this like UK fashion company to like make these jeans? And I was like, what are you talking about? And then they, folks called my attention to it. I was like, wow, yeah, no, they do not have permission to do that. So that's interesting. And it sort of evolved from there.
Okay. So you launched, or people helped launch, a sort of reaction campaign.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was trying to contact them, and then we had a conversation, the UK company, and it was, really disappointing. And so I got a lawyer and drafted a letter, and I just I started to, but as I mentioned, I processed everything through stitching. So I was like, well, I'm going to have to stitch about this one tonight. And as I started to think about it, I was like, actually, it'd be really funny for me personally if I stitched my message onto a pair of my jeans. So I pulled out my best skinny jeans and stitched onto the butt pocket, the resistance will be paired with a bodysuit and boots for the ultimate babe vibes. And then I recreated the photo, which is just a really funny ass shot of these jeans, me and them, and then I posted them, and then I couldn't stop. So then because I was like, oh, I have so many messages. So I think I made 4 pairs before I was like, okay, that was fun, but I don't have any more jeans left. But folks kept asking how can I support? How can I support? Or saying I want those jeans. I want those jeans. And I'm like, you guys, we're not making jeans and commodifying this. But then I was like, actually, you should make jeans too. And so I put a tutorial on my website, and then I shared it with everyone. And I was like, if you want to make a pair of jeans, you totally should. And then we will have a whole campaign around this. And then I asked them what we should name it. And 2 folks came up with rebuttal. And I just thought it was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. And so that had to be the name, with butt being in all caps. And then folks just jumped in right away. And now there's many hundreds of them online, and they are amazing.
What do they say?
I mean, it's funny because a lot of them started with things pay artists, or, you don't own my art, and, things around this sort of similar message to what I was putting out there around the copyright infringement issue. And then folks took it to some really fun, feminist messaging around impervious to the male gaze, or,
I love that.
Oh, that's my favorite. Or, just strong as hell, or, just different message, power messages. And they just keep getting more clever and more elaborate. And it's just been so much fun to watch people participate in.
I may stitch impervious to the male gaze on the butt of my jeans.
Please do. Hashtag rebuttal.
That's fabulous. Right. Okay. And so this is sort of ongoing. It's not over.
It's definitely not over.
and kind of subsequent from that, on Badass Cross Stitch, I feel like you've sort of just been stitching some different messages and talking about sort of highlighting some different issues or people who you just sort of feel need attention, whether it's in the US or worldwide, people, who may be the underdog or who are doing things or are victims of things that, you feel like maybe, aren't getting the attention that they deserve. And you're just sort of stitching their name, or it might even just being ideas. You had one the other day, that just said, I love my body. And you were just talking about how growing up, you really never heard a woman say, I love my body. And why is that? And why, why do women so rarely say that? And how can we change that? And sort of just bring forth ideas that maybe need, highlighting. And so you're sort of just using your platform because how many, I don't know if you know off the top of your head, how many Instagram followers this whole thing resulted in you having?
For Badass Cross Stitch, I think it's somewhere around 70,000 right now.
Right. So you ended up with, and I don't know how many you had before all of this happened, but it wasn't that.
No. I mean, my Insta is not even that old. So, but prior to that, I think I had 15,000 prior to, so in the last year, it's gone up. Tremendously.
Okay. So you ended up as a result of all of this work. I mean, it's not that it's not been work on your part. It wasn't accidental, but as a result of all of this, you've ended up with this massive platform and a huge audience. And so you've got an opportunity there to do something. And so you've really been using it to say something with it. Am I right about that? Oh,
definitely. I feel incredible pressure, but not pressure, responsibility at this point. In the beginning, I would just post things and, it didn't matter, right? Like I was just posting for fun. But now there's each post is takes a lot of energy and thoughtfulness in order to feel comfortable putting it out there, in order to be supportive, encourage, positive conversation and positive interaction. Because I think that the internet and social media can get really ugly really quickly. And especially when talking about hard topics. So I feel this great responsibility to, set people up for success and set the tone, for how I want people to communicate with each other, online and through Instagram, but most especially on through my community. So it does take a lot of effort on my part, but what an honor that I get to do that.
Do you have specific things you do to set that tone?
Yeah, I mean, I will write everything out and think about it for days before I end up posting it. I have posts lined up for the next week that I'm still considering how I want to say something. With the young woman Mink, who is the lacrosse player that I sort of featured recently. In that scenario, I was working with one of her mentors on language and how what should the action item be and how do we keep it positive? Because these are incredible young women that we want to be, supporting, but still bringing up an issue that is really important. And so we went back and forth on sort of what the copy was going to be and how we were going to frame the ask and before we, went public with it.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot more thought that goes into it than one might see when you just read it casually. And definitely. I wondered a few things about that, sort of following up with that. One of them is around developing a thick skin because the internet can be rough. And I know there have been times, in my own writing. So I sort of can consider myself an activist in an sort of somewhat of a different way, maybe an activist journalist in a way. I do a lot of activism through writing and try to make change within an industry. That's sort of the role that I play. And I've done that for a number of years. And as a result of doing that, I often get angry emails and also angry messages from people. Not everybody is happy with things, and people sometimes are quite upset. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about, and you're treading in much more political waters than I am, or sort of more overtly. I mean, I think everything is actually a political water, and we can talk about that too. But you're much more overtly political, shall we say, and overtly controversial. controversial, big C controversial. And so I'm imagining you're really getting a lot more of it than I am. And so I'm wondering how are you dealing with the really awful, and sometimes, a post like the kinds of posts that you're creating can get picked up, for example, on one of these message boards of, people who are on the dark web or something like that, where once they've picked it up, they don't know anything about you, but they're just going to come in and seriously troll, and attack, really. And it can be really nasty. So I just wondered how do you sort of deal?
Yeah, I mean, I have a pretty stringent rule around, like, I will just block you, right? Like, we're not even going to have a conversation if what you're saying is like vitriolous or threatening, lots of death threats and rape threats and all sorts of things come through.
You have gotten death threats and rape threats. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. But that, you just get blocked, right? Like, we're not, I don't, like, some folks will leave those up as a way of like showing what happens, or, they have rules around, like, I don't delete comments or posts or block people. And I'm just like, no, this is my community, and I am going to protect them, and I'm going to protect myself. So it's constant monitoring so that I can delete and block when necessary.
But as the monitor, you see them all.
Oh, definitely.
And
yeah.
So even though you're the protector, you are the one who sees it all. So every rape threat, you're seeing that rape. So you have to read it first before it goes.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my skin's Kevlar at this point. It just is. And I'm also, so I'm a trained mediator. So I have, there are situations where it's not that, right? Like, it's just somebody who disagrees with me or who has a different opinion, or, and those things, like, I think can lead to really interesting conversations. And folks are usually quite disarmed when you don't come at them with, like, you're wrong, or, like, I want to talk to people. I want to know what their opinions are. I want to know why they think differently than me. And so I can have these conversations in a way that I think sort of disarms people. And then, we both walk away with a different sense of what just happened. And in a lot of ways, I can fold them into the community because of how I respond to them.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to ask about was, I also get this other comment often, which is, keep politics out of it. I came to this craft blog because I want to relax, and I want you to not have any politics here. I don't know why you would bring politics into this conversation. And, and my reaction to that is that everything is political, right? So your choice to say that is a political choice. And there is actually nothing that is not political. That is like, that's an impossible thing that you're saying. So that is how I feel, but I don't know what your response is to that.
Well, nobody says that to me because everything I do is political. So they're just sort of like, oh yeah. I mean, if I do something that's not political, they're like, I don't understand. Like, why are you like, doing this happy message? That's not what we're here for. Like, let's talk the hard stuff. But I recently read the book on tyranny, which is just an amazing book. By Timothy Snyder, and one of his quotes, which I have now stitched onto a vintage handkerchief, is, "Life is political not because the world cares about how you feel, but because the world reacts to what you do." And like, every move we make, every word we say has politics and a political connotation to it, whether we see it as that or not. We tell the world constantly where we align and what our values are and what our motivations are. And to me, that is politics.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So like you can't quote escape politics or like cut politics out because you want to relax. Like it's just not, it's like being able to relax and not think about politics is political, right?
Right.
That's a privilege that so many people don't have. And so
Exactly.
it just fascinates me when that happens. So you can send them to my Stitch next time.
Okay.
Like, hold on, I've got a Stitch for you.
Okay. That's, I think that's a really important point. Okay. And, all right. I'm thinking a little bit about your next, two next things that you have coming up. One of them is that you're giving a commencement speech. Is that right? Is that coming up soon?
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta write that.
Put that on your to-do list.
Yeah, it's there.
Okay.
June 13th. Yeah, I'm going to Philadelphia to Drexel University to speak, to do the commencement address for the Honors College.
Cool. What are you talking about?
I have no idea. Yeah, I mean, my message is always do stuff, right? So it'll be a much cleverer way of saying, like, go do stuff.
Meaning, like, do stuff in what way? Like, I think you had talked, I heard you talking a little bit at one point about sort of perfectionism and sort of don't overthink things. Is it that kind of do stuff?
Yeah, like this idea of progress over perfection and valuing progress instead of being stymied by the idea of perfection, which I didn't even know was a thing until a conversation I had a couple years ago with some folks who were just like, well, I'm a procrastinator because I'm a perfectionist. And it was literally this mind-blowing moment where I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what is that correlation for you? Help me understand. And we had this amazing conversation about how their quest for perfection causes them to never start things, or even if they do start things, they never release something, right? Or like take action on it outside of the planning of it because it's never perfect. So because they're never at 100%, they either don't start or they can't do anything with it, which just blew my mind because I'm just not programmed that way. And so I started to think about like, okay, well, what's my creative process and what's my process for doing things? And I recently had a conversation on a podcast about, the host was like, yeah, well, 80% is my number. If I can get it 80%, then I'm like, good to go. And I was like, that's awesome. I wonder what my number is. I was like, I really think it's like 20%. like, if I'm like 20% there, I'm like, yeah, let's do this and see what happens. And so I really, that message and just that paradigm got me really tripped up and really wanting to sort of help folks just because I think that's how we get stuck or like there's so much to offer the world, but they undermine their own value by searching for this like perfect when like 50% is epic, right? And that can create the change, and that can be the spark that grows the thing.
That's such a great message. I think that's a fantastic message. And I have to say, like, I'm with you. I'm totally not a perfectionist, which is why people send me messages all the time and they're like, there's a typo in paragraph 2. And I'm like, I know, thanks. I'll fix it again. I know. Yeah. Because like, I would rather just hit publish and have a typo in paragraph 2.
Me too.
Yeah.
Although unstitching things is a little painful. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it's true. Actually, that's one of the reasons I love to sew is that it actually makes me slow down and take my time because typically I sort of rush through everything. And sewing is the way that I have to be more careful. And it's good for me. It makes me be more perfect because if you rush when you sew, everything's going to be backward and you're going to have to just start over. So sewing is my way of becoming more of a perfectionist, which is what I need. So
love it. Love that.
Yeah, I'm like the opposite of everyone else. But Okay. And then you have another project that you're working on that sounds really epically huge called Badass Her Story. And I wanted you to have some time to plug that and talk a little bit about it. So, because it sounds participatory and I think people might want to hear about it and be able to participate.
Awesome. Yeah. This is the most ambitious thing I've ever done. Sort of after the experience of the End Gun Violence Project and seeing that folks will do things if asked and provided, guidelines and opportunity, I thought, okay, I'm going to do another big craftivism project, but I'm not going to do it until it's good and I know what it is and it comes to me, right? Like I needed it to come to me. And it has come to me and I've been working on it for the last 6 months. It's going to launch on June 2nd. And it's called Badass Herstory. And really what I'm doing is inviting every woman, female identified or gender non-binary human on the planet to stitch me their story, whatever that means to them, whether it's words or visual representation, whether they're quilting it or felting it or embroidering it in a 12 by 12 square with a 1-inch margin, so 13 by 13, and then send it to me. And phase 2 of the project will be to create massive 3D structures that we then use these stories to skin in order to create a giant art exhibit. And then there will be a digital component, which will be an online archive / museum where there'll be a photo of each piece and then information about each artist and sort of whatever they want to share about their story and their history as the digital component to go with the analog art piece. And so, but low key, this is really a community organizing project. It's just disguised as like a fiber artist craftivism project. The point is that I want people to get together and to, and so the project is the way and the mechanism by which I'm trying to create these communities or have these communities created around this project. And then I have a toolkit for project ambassadors who, are the folks who are going to create and host these gatherings, stitch-ups that will take the experience from we're here to figure out our story and stitch it to, because that's going to take a while, right? You got to get together a couple times. You can't just do this in one session. And so then once you have your story and you're just executing on this vision, then getting together when you do get together to have important conversations around what sort of change you want to see in your community and how, as a small new community, you can create change in the community in which you live. And what does that look like? And how do you mobilize? And how do you roll this into civic engagement?
Got it. Okay. So how can people sort of get notified for when information's available for, when they can get all the goods that they need to get started?
Yeah. badassherstory.com.
Okay.
Or on Instagram, Badass Herstory.
Got it.
Actually, I'm on every social platform as Badass Herstory. So Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, we're there.
Okay, cool. So people can head over, sign up, and that way they'll get notified. And you said June 2nd is the launch date.
Yeah, that's my 40th birthday, so I thought that'd be a good time to launch.
All right. Yes. I feel like turning 40 is sort of this wonderful moment of like, what do I want to do with my life? I don't know.
Yeah. I'm psyched for it. And so this is just like the added bonus, the added layer.
Good. Okay.
Plus I needed a deadline, so.
And then there's that.
Right.
All right, cool. Great. And I want to get to your recommendations. So you had a couple of things that you wanted to recommend that you're loving right now. So the first one is, I think it might be an Instagram account. So it's at Chi Arts Boys.
Yes, Shy Arts
Oh, sorry,
Boys.
Chai
No, that's
Arts
okay.
Boys. So it's
It's
spelled
Chicago.
CHIO, like
Yeah,
Chicago.
Shy
Got it.
Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, these two young men I met a year ago, and I taught them how to embroider for part of the End Gun Violence Project. And they just picked it up in minutes and were all about it, and have just been they're just so cool. And so now we meet regularly, and we work on things, and they came up with their own Instagram account, and I made them business cards, and now they're just creating some really cool stuff, and I'm just really proud of them.
How old are they?
19, I think, 18 and 19, or 19 and 20.
That's awesome. And now they're like embroidering.
Yeah, they're like creating spectacular art and really telling their story as like young Black men in Chicago, and it's just really neat to see, how they're owning it and what they're creating as a result of it.
Oh, that's so cool. Wow,
Yeah.
what a cool thing. Okay, that's awesome to go check out. All right, The Bold Type on Freeform.
Yeah. It's a TV show. It's so funny. I thought for sure that I was going to hate it because it was just one of those like, oh, is this going to be sort of this faux feminist bubblegum TV show? And then I started watching it, and I was like, actually, this is brilliant. And each episode is like incredibly challenging topics that I can't actually believe they're covering, and they're doing it through this, like quirky, adorable sort of story. But yeah, I binge watched the whole first season, and am gearing up for season 2.
Wow. Okay. So like I don't watch TV. Like I haven't watched TV in I don't know, like many years, like a very long time.
I love TV.
I have like no frame of reference. But for people who watch TV, this sounds like a good show. No, it's like really terrible
Awesome.
Because I go to parties and people talking about TV, and I'm like, oh yeah, yeah. I have no idea what you're saying. I'm sorry.
You're so funny. You're like, TVs, yeah, that's a thing.
A thing that people do on the Netflix. I don't know what you're saying, but okay. All right, the Welcome Blanket Craftivism Project.
Yeah, that's Jaina, who was one of the co-founders of the Pussy Hat Project, started the second sort of project, which are welcome blankets, and people are knitting and crocheting blankets to welcome new immigrants and refugees into the country. So as they come in, they're getting a handcrafted welcome blanket with a letter from the person who created it, welcoming them into the country. And I just think it's astounding, and the sheer number that she has already collected it's so powerful to see, and it gives me so much hope for our world. So I'm just elated. And if I could knit or crochet, I would totally do one, but nobody would want my welcome blanket.
Well, you weave though, right? So
I do. And if I had like 300 hours, I would totally weave one.
Sadly, weaving is very slow. So
man. Like I am a patient person, but weaving is like the thing. I mean, I love to do it because it forces me to slow down to a level of slowness that I didn't even know I was capable of.
It's like, you think cross stitch is slow? Yeah, weaving.
Oh yeah, forget it. Forget it. Weaving. Oh yeah.
Well, Shannon, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the While She Naps podcast. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you. I had a great time. Thanks for having me.
And you've been listening to the While She Naps podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg. Visit my blog, whileshenaps.com, where you can sign up for my email newsletter to get the best in sewing, blogging, and small business delivered right to your inbox each week. Today's episode was brought to you by Folkwear. Folkwear has over 90 sewing patterns in print from around the world and across the decades, made with high quality sewing instructions, historic and cultural information, and including handwork instructions to make your garments totally unique. Folkwear patterns are truly outstanding. So order yours today and use that coupon code WSN20 at checkout to get 20% off your order. Thank you so much, Folkwear. And if you enjoy the show, tell a friend about it. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.